Hey everyone, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to the concept of elasticity. It's one of the most useful concepts, I think, in economics and something that y'all will be able to relate to right off the bat. I happen to be recording this video on February 14th, 2020, and of course, February 14th is Valentine's Day. So, a perfect example to explain the concept of the price elasticity of demand is what happens to the demand curve for roses on Valentine's Day. And if you take a typical day in June, there will certainly be some people interested in buying roses for their sweetheart. However, if they notice that the price of roses for some reason is relatively high, they might seek out a substitute. So they might find some purple flowers or yellow flowers or a different type of flower that's a cheaper price that is pretty as well and would be a nice gift. However, on Valentine's Day, roses are a little bit different. Roses, you probably don't necessarily want to show up with a bouquet of flowers that doesn't include roses on Valentine's Day. So when the price goes up on Valentine's Day, people are a little bit less sensitive to those price changes. And if you look at this little graphic, which shows two demand curves for roses, on the left is the demand curve for roses in June, and on the right is a demand curve for roses on February 14th. And you'll notice that what distinguishes these two demand curves is its steepness. The one on the left, which is what we call elastic, shows a demand curve in which buyers tend to be really sensitive to price changes. On the right, the graph shows a really steep demand curve. That's what we call an inelastic demand curve, and that's what the demand curve looks like on February 14th. That's because buyers are really unsensitive to changes in price, right? Price goes up, well, you got to buy those roses anyway, otherwise you're in the doghouse. So the concept that we'll look at is called the price elasticity of demand, which measures the sensitivity of consumers to changes in price. We'll also look at a couple of other concepts of elasticity, such as the price elasticity of supply and the income elasticity of demand. But we'll start out by looking at the price elasticity of demand. And why is this concept important? I think there's two implications for understanding the price elasticity of demand. One is that how consumers respond to changes in price has an impact on profitability. So you may know some business owners, and while they may not know this concept, they understand it. They may not know the name, but they understand it in concept. You can ask any business owner to say, hey, when you raise price by 10%, what happens to your customers? And they might tell you, well, I can't really do that because I have a lot of competitors and they'll go elsewhere. So price elasticity impacts profit. Another implication is for policymakers. So an ongoing debate is the debate of adding a tax to soda pops. The idea is that if we add a per unit price to soda pops, say 10% or 10 cents, that'll raise the price and discourage people from purchasing sugary sodas and seeking out relatively cheaper, healthier drinks, such as a bottle of water. The effectiveness of that policy depends on the price elasticity of demand. So if the demand curve for sodas looks something like this flat one here on the left, then that means that people will be really sensitive to those taxes and it would be effective. People would give up drinking sodas and find other things. However, does sodas look more like roses on Valentine's Day? If it does, then consumers may not change their behavior that much. That's one of the reasons why taxes on cigarettes haven't been really effective at decreasing smoking, because the demand curve for cigarettes happens to be really steep, or what we call inelastic. That is because of its addictive nature. People they may mind the higher prices, but they are willing to pay for it. All right, so this is a little insight into the concept that we'll be looking at. I think it's a practical one and a useful one, and I hope you enjoy the topic.